welcome to Live Interactive English, everyone. Hello, I'm Mike.
And I'm Winnie.
And today we have a story for you guys. Interesting, a story of an hour. The story of an hour.
Yes. So what is that? What do you think it's about?
I'm guessing it's kind of like a history story about why we have hours. Right? Because time was sort of invented by people.
Right.
Or at least counting time. And there are 24 hours in a day and 60 minutes in an hour. And, how did we come up with that idea?
Right. And we have the word the story of an hour. So,
exactly, yeah.
So maybe we know, like the history of how people started to tell time.
It could be, but generally with articles like this, we don't put it in our story section, do we?
And I just don't feel like the story of how the hour came to be would be very interesting.
Yeah, they might say the history of time or something.
Yeah.
Okay, well, clearly we don't really know what's going on here, and this is a good lesson in how you shouldn't judge a book or a story by its title or its cover, because we don't really have a lot of ideas about what the story of an hour is going to be telling us. So I have a solution.
How about we continue?
You know exactly what my solution is. Let's read the story and then we'll know what it's all about. It's really quite simple. All right, let's get to it. One fine spring day, Louise Mallard sat quietly at home, unaware that her life was about to change forever. Her sister, Josephine, came calling. Josephine's face was pale, and she looked worried. She took Louise's hands and said,
"There is something I must tell you."
Ever so gently, Josephine explained that Brentley, Louise's husband, had died in a train accident. Louise's weak heart pounded, and she broke into violent tears in her sister's arms before retreating upstairs to her room.
Welcome to today's story, The Story of an Hour, Part 1. Needless to say, I'm on the edge of my seat because I don't really know what we're going to get into.
Interesting. So this is Part 1, so we have a Part 2 tomorrow. So shouldn't this be the story of a half hour? Anyways, let's get into our article. It's the story of an hour, not all of the hours, just one. So we're expecting a lot of action to happen in this 60-minute period over 2 days. So let's get into it. It says, one fine spring day, Louise Mallard sat quietly at home, unaware that her life was about to change forever.
Dun, dun, dun!
Wow, already I'm kind of into it. This is exciting.
Well, the title already got us excited.
The title was, it certainly gets your, it piques your interest, to use a fancy word. But already we know that something big is going to happen. And even more exciting, Louise, the main character, is unaware.
So we have our word unaware, our adjective, and it basically means did not notice or know of something, just like we are unaware of what's to happen in this story.
I have no idea what's going on.
None. So you could also say Teddy was unaware that the food would be so expensive. I bet Teddy went to Taipei 101 to eat something.
He was having a caviar pizza. So he should have been a bit more aware.
That is true.
Yeah, all right. Well, so far we are aware of something. We're aware that something dramatic and big is going to happen to change Louise's life forever. And when we say forever, this adverb means basically for all time. From now into the future, and it will never stop, it will never end, it will just go on and on and on. For example, if you're having a good time, you might say, I wish this vacation would last forever. I could sit on this beach in Thailand or wherever for the next 40 years and be quite happy, or something like that, until the end of time. So there's Louise. She's in the beginning of our story. She's sitting there peacefully, quietly, happily, normal life, but something's going to happen. Probably very soon.
Yes. Well, continuing on.
Ooh, here it goes.
Her sister, Josephine, came calling.
Ooh.
Josephine's face was pale.
Oh no.
And she looked worried.
Oh no.
She took Louise's hands and said, "There is something I must tell you."
That's not going to be good.
I don't think, if anyone starts their sentence that way, I don't know. It might be good, but this doesn't sound good.
When they're pale and they look worried?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not going to be, I'm going to take you out for dinner tonight. No, it's
Yeah.
going to be something bad. So what is it? Ever so gently, Josephine explained that Brentley, Louise's husband, had died in a train accident. Okay, that's bad.
That's bad. I would say that's bad.
That will definitely change your life forever, too. Her husband had died in a train accident. That is terrible.
Not a car accident
Not
either.
a car accident, a train accident. Yeah, absolutely horrible. Louise's weak heart pounded, and she broke into violent tears in her sister's arms before retreating upstairs to her room. Wow, that really paints a picture of the sudden grief and sadness that has come down on Louise after hearing that her beloved husband had died in a train accident. I'm sure if you heard news of a loved one dying like that, so suddenly and shockingly, violent tears, that's probably a pretty good adjective to use for how hard you would be crying.
Exactly. And I'm sure a lot of you have heard this adjective violent, and it means using physical actions with the idea or the intention of hurting someone. So, I'm thinking, I want to hurt this person, so I'm going to use violence, maybe to punch or kick them. But in this case, violent tears, we're talking about the type of crying that makes your whole body just jerk back and forth because you are just so upset. And so you could also say, my mom and her sisters got into a violent argument. So we're also talking about how heated and how intense the argument or the emotion is. So far, I'm still on the edge of my seat.
I'm a little bit on the edge. I'm getting there. I'm moving forward.
I'm
moving forward.
Okay.
I'm waiting for something else to happen.
So it takes more than a train accident killing a husband to get you.
I mean, already it's a bit of an interesting story, but I still think something else is going to happen.
I'm still waiting on the 60 minutes.
That's true. We're only 10 minutes into it.
Yeah. Well, let's take a break and see what happens later.
Hello， 大家好，我是 Hanny。这两天要读的是美国小说家凯特·肖邦的著名短篇故事，叫做《The Story of an Hour》。1小时的故事。Mike 老师提到这个标题会激起你的兴趣，那老师用到 pique 这个动词 ，P-I-Q-U-E。Pique 可以表达激起，像是激起好奇心啊、兴趣等等。那么 Winnie 老师则用到 on the edge of one's seat。当你坐在椅子边边，感觉好像很紧张，坐不住，所以它就可以表达因为紧张啊、兴奋或焦虑而坐立难安的意思。好，那么故事一开始提到，在一个晴朗的春日 ，Louise Mallard 静静坐在家里，她不知道她的生活即将永远改变。她的姐姐 Josephine 来访，那姐姐的脸色苍白，看起来忧心忡忡。她拉着 Louise 的手，非常温柔解释说 ，Louise 的丈夫 Brentley 在一起火车事故当中丧生了。那么 Louise 她虚弱的心脏剧烈跳动，她在姐姐怀里痛哭流泪，然后又躲到楼上自己的房间里。我们先来看单字 unaware。unaware 它是形容不知情的、未察觉的。forever 则表示永远、长久的，它是个副词。violent 则是形容强烈的，或者是激烈的，或者是暴力的。Winnie 老师在提到痛哭的时候，身体可能会哭到抽动，那老师用到 jerk 这个动词 J-E-R-K jerk， 它可以表达突然的抽拉或是移动。好，那这边一个重点，我们进入文法时间。好，这边我们来学习主词加动词逗号 being 加形容词，这样分词构句的用法。我们用对等连接词 and 在连接两个主词相同的子句时，可以省略掉其中一个主词跟连接词，然后把动词改成分词。那我们来看一个例句 ：She locked herself in her room and she was upset by the conversation. 她把自己锁在房间里，对于那段谈话感到很不高兴。那我们可以删除连接词 and， 还有后半句相同的主词 she。那么 was 改成现在分词 being。being 其实还可以再省略哦，那就会只留下形容词 upset。句子就变成 She locked herself in her room, upset by the conversation. 好，那我们接着回到课文中。
Alone, Louise took a seat by the window and looked outside. The trees were full of fresh green leaves. Birds were singing, and the sky was bright blue. As she sat, she began to feel something strange. Her mind whispered,
Free, free, free.
She felt guilty, but she couldn't help it. She had loved her husband most of the time, but now she could live for herself. Thinking about her future, she saw years ahead that were all hers to enjoy. No more bending to someone else's will.
Free. Body and soul free.
She thought again.
Welcome back from the break. I hope you are as titillated as we are. Before the break, we learned that Josephine, who is Louise's sister, came rushing in with big news that Louise's husband, Brentley, died in a train accident.
And this caused a big, of course, emotional reaction from Louise. She started crying very violently, sobbing tears, and then rushed upstairs to her room to be alone. Because, of course, when you get big, bad news like this, very emotional, you might need some time on your own. So that's where we find Louise as we pick up our story. It says, alone in her room, alone, Louise took a seat by the window and looked outside. Okay, so she's just collecting her thoughts. You know, you have to kind of think about all sorts of things if
Your
something
husband
like
just died, yeah.
this happens to you, right? So it's very hard to know what to do or how to feel because this is all new, shocking, and terrible. But she goes to the window, she looks outside, and what does she see? It says the trees were full of fresh green leaves. So it sounds like a beautiful spring or summer day. Birds were singing and the sky was bright blue.
As she sat, she began to feel something strange. Her mind whispered, free, free, free. Ooh, okay. This is kind of, this is getting me more on the edge of my seat.
Yeah.
Are you still?
I don't think she's thinking about a big sale at a store down the road with free things. No, she means herself. She is free.
Well, yeah, because then
Yeah?
she felt guilty, but she couldn't help it.
Really?
Interesting.
What an interesting reaction. What her emotions are sort of telling her that she's free, that this is a good thing, but her other emotions are telling her that she feels guilty. So she has a real mix of emotions here.
Because just now she was violently sobbing.
Right?
Ran to her room, and then now she's like, kind of like, wait a second.
It's a beautiful day outside, and she's whispering to herself that she is free. When you whisper, you speak very quietly so that other people can't hear you very well, just the people nearby. Maybe you're kind of telling someone a secret and you don't want other people to know, or maybe it's just a quiet place like a library or someone's sleeping just over there and you don't want to disturb them, but it's basically a way of talking so that the volume or the loudness of your voice is very, very low, all right? So you're gonna whisper because you don't want anyone to hear.
That was a great explanation.
Thank you very much. I love you, she whispered.
Oh, I love you.
She whispered. There you go. So back to the article. Let's find out what is causing this mix of emotions in Louise. It kind of gets explained here. It's very interesting. She had loved her husband most of the time, but now she could live for herself. So I guess they'd been married, she and Brantley, for many years. So she'd loved her husband most of the time. Like most couples, they had fights and arguments and good times and bad. But now that her husband has died, she could live for herself.
Okay, that's sad, but kind of nice.
It is kind of nice and sad, but it's also kind of real, you know? I mean, she has her own life now. She can do whatever she wants. She doesn't have to think about another person. Interesting. Thinking about her future, she saw years ahead that were all hers to enjoy. As long as she's someone who wouldn't be very lonely by losing her husband, if she's happy with herself and on her own, then yeah, she might feel like now she's got a lot of free time, a lot of choices, a lot of freedom to kind of live the life she wants to live on her own.
Right, and as the article continues, no more bending to someone else's will. Or in other words, now she doesn't have to wait for someone else's thoughts or opinions. She can finally choose for herself. And as we know, this story was written quite some time ago where women didn't necessarily have the same freedom as men or as their husbands. Free, body and soul free, she thought again. So just like Mike was saying, her body, her spirit, everything is free now. She is liberated and she is able to do what she wants to do. I am very excited to see how this pans out.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's kind of an interesting story so far. And as you said, if she had, lived, if the story is from a long time ago, maybe her husband made a lot of decisions for them, right? He would say, I want to eat this and I want to go here on my holiday.
Yeah.
And now she can go where she wants, do what she wants, eat what she wants, date who she wants.
Ooh, or perhaps get a job.
Or perhaps get a job. Yeah. She has all of these options. But of course, the guilt is also because her husband died. And, that's a very interesting story. Okay, well, that's the first 30 minutes of the story of an hour, and we're going to be back with part 2 tomorrow. So please do come back and join us for this very interesting story.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
刚刚说到 Louise 躲在楼上自己的房间，她独自一个人坐在窗边看着外面。那树上长满了嫩绿的新叶，鸟儿在歌唱，天空又是湛蓝的。她开始觉得有点奇怪，她的心低语着自由了，自由了，自由了。那这个单字 whisper 就有低语、小声说话的意思。好，那 Louise 她现在感到愧疚，可是又没办法克制。大多数的时候，她是爱着她的丈夫的，可是现在啊，她可以为自己而活了。她想到她的未来全都是她的，任她享受，不再屈服于别人的意愿，她的身心都自由了。那读到这里 ，Winnie 老师很想知道接下来事情会如何发展。老师用到 pan out 这个片语，它表示发展，也可以表达进展顺利的意思。老师还有用到 titillate 这个动词 titillate titillate 它可以表达使兴奋或是激起什么的兴趣。好，那这边一个重点，我们进入文法时间。这边要介绍的是过去完成式 had 加上过去分词 pp， 这表示在过去某个时间点或某个动作之前已经完成的经验或动作，它可以单独存在，或者是搭配过去简单式来表达过去两个动作的先后顺序。先发生的动作用过去完成式，后发生的动作用过去简单式。例如Frank had already learned the news before I told him. 在我告诉 Frank 之前，他就已经得知那个消息了。所以 Frank 先得知消息，我们用过去完成式 had learned。那我告诉他是后发生的事，所以用过去简单式 told。好，那以上这些讲解，同学别走开，马上回来哦。
One fine spring day, Louise Mallard sat quietly at home, unaware that her life was about to change forever. Her sister, Josephine, came calling. Josephine's face was pale, and she looked worried. She took Louise's hands and said,
There is something I must tell you.
Ever so gently, Josephine explained that Brentley, Louise's husband, had died in a train accident. Louise's weak heart pounded, and she broke into violent tears in her sister's arms before retreating upstairs to her room. Alone, Louise took a seat by the window and looked outside. The trees were full of fresh green leaves. Birds were singing, and the sky was bright blue. As she sat, she began to feel something strange. Her mind whispered,
Free, free, free.
She felt guilty, but she couldn't help it. She had loved her husband most of the time, but now she could live for herself. Thinking about her future, she saw years ahead that were all hers to enjoy. No more bending to someone else's will.
Free, body and soul free.
She thought again.
Taiwan has 16 officially recognized indigenous communities. Making up about 8% of Taiwan's total indigenous population is the Bunun community. A perfect place to learn more about their rich culture is the Bunun Leisure Farm. The Bunun community is one of the indigenous communities in Taiwan. In 1995, Pastor Guang Shenbai started the Bunun Leisure Farm. He wanted to offer jobs to the local Bunun. The farm is in a mountain paradise in Taidong County. The area has clean air, pure water, and rich soil. Fruits and vegetables here are all organic. They raise cattle, sheep, and chickens too. Visitors can enjoy delicious food, local art, and traditional performances. A trip to the farm gives you a close look at Bunun life and culture. There is really so much to do and see at Bunun Leisure Farm. With their various hands-on activities and engaging performances, you will definitely leave knowing more about the rich culture and heritage of the Bunun people.